Hello, welcome back. I'm here with Robert Howe, attorney located in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, New York. There's been a lot of changes in the real estate market, and we're going to get you some of that information today. And then we'll have some follow-up videos, so be on the lookout for those as well. If you like our video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel so you'll get a notification when those other videos come out. I am Annette Fisher. I am the producer of Living in Brooklyn, New York, and the real estate broker for Bresry Realty. And so, Bob, I want to just open it up by telling buyers a little bit about what they need to do. And one of the things in order to buy a home, and one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of times they'll immediately go to a real estate person, whether it's a salesperson or the broker, and they'll go to get their loan information, get maybe a pre-approval. And I think there's actually a step before that that a lot of people miss. And that is to go and check their own credit. And they could do this by going to annualcreditreport.com. They could look up 3 different reports there. It's totally free, provided actually as a service approved by the government. And they can get an Experian, a TransUnion, and an Equifax credit report. It doesn't give them a score for the free report. And my recommendation, since these 3 bureaus are pretty similar, is that someone should actually pull one of those every 4 months. And that way throughout the year, they'll have an idea if anybody has made any inquiries. And so after that, a lot of times they do go and get their actual credit pulled by the lender. And so, Bob, if you could tell us, a little bit about the process that you think someone deals with when they go to a lender to get pre-approved or pre-qualified.
So, that's an interesting point, Annette, because I'm very big on preparation, and I don't like to be surprised. And I'd rather know the answer now than find out months from now when we've put in a lot of time and energy. But I was speaking to a client last week, and I made about 10 different recommendations to them. Do this before you do that. Do another thing before you do that. Do another thing. And they kept saying, no, we'll find out. I go, no, I don't want to be with you a couple months from now when you should have done something several months ago and you didn't, and now the deal falls through. So, what you're saying is really the essence of making sure you have a success. There's a start, a middle, and an end, and you want to make sure you have a successful ending. You don't want to have an unsuccessful ending. That is no fun, having your deal fall through, getting denied, not buying your house, having your hopes, crumble. So I always believe in, just ask the question now. I don't like to be surprised. Some people take the other attitude. They don't want to know. Well, I can understand that. Sometimes I don't want to know. But in a lot of things, I do want to know. And I don't want to go through something and find out and be embarrassed later on that I shoulda, coulda, woulda, done something. So what you mentioned about the whole credit report thing, before you do something, in real estate, you should really, check your own situation to make sure you don't have any dings on your credit. It seems that you're making enough income. It seems that your job is steady. It's not like your boss said, we gave you a D rating, within the last quarter because you're not a very good employee or something, or you're self-employed and you realize that, selling gas cars is not really the future anymore. You have to start selling electric cars. But that's another topic. So, you really have to make sure that you are on a steady footing before you go. And so once you have, and plus gather all your paperwork, you're going to need tax returns, W-2s, maybe copies of checks, information about where you lived over the last 5 or 10 years, employers, just about everything that you need to do when you're preparing your income tax returns, probably a lot of what you have to do before meeting with the broker. And, I always recommend, recommendation for a mortgage broker. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of advertisements. But word of mouth really does mean something. It means, one, whoever gives you the word of mouth recommendation has used that person and has had a successful conclusion. It means they trust that person. It means that they feel that that person is qualified. It's one thing to do a TV advertisement and say, come, we'll approve you no matter what your credit is, versus, a trusted confidant who has used that person. And of course, you are one of those people, Annette, that
Thank you, Bob.
people would recommend and, be very happy with and very secure in helping them get a mortgage. Anyway, once you get all your paperwork and your house in order, you would meet with a mortgage broker or a representative, and that person would ask you 101 questions. First, they take your social security number and run that. So if your credit is bad, they will know that immediately, and you'll have wasted your time going to that person. So hence your comment, check your credit report yourself before someone tells you, oh, you missed 5 payments over the last couple of years, and all those little things ding your credit. Now, it might not knock you out, but it may end up percolating into a rate that you ultimately get from the lender, because the lender is in the risk business also. And the riskier you are, the higher your interest rate is going to be. So the mortgage broker will take all sorts of information, applications from you. They'll process some of it and then hand it over to somebody in the back office. We call them bean counters, who will scrutinize everything that you do or have done, make sure all the numbers add up. And at some point, at the end of the process, hopefully you'll get what's called a letter of commitment. Letter of commitment says, Dear Annette, we're happy to offer you a loan for what you applied for, $500,000 at such and such rate for such and such term, and also list all of the expenses that might be associated with the loan. But lenders will also, at the end of the letter, first they'll say congratulations, but then later on they'll say, oh, by the way, you also have to keep up your good credit, and you may have to give us some additional documentation along the way in order to show that, when you met me on, in March, when we close, say in July, all of your employment, banking, credit is all very similar to what you initially did. And with that letter of commitment, you'll end up going to the next stage of the closing. But I got a little ahead of myself. First, you probably want to get, before the letter of commitment, pre-qualification or pre-approval. What does that mean? It just kind of means you're not a financial deadbeat. They want to make sure you have a decent credit score to go forward. And that's when you're buying a home, the seller will ask for that sort of information. They just don't want to sell to somebody who they don't know their credit background for. And
Okay, the only way to get me to tell you is that when I go off stage, you could start talking again, because that's the only way I can get you singly here. Okay. You can't hear me once I remove myself. Do you hear me now?
I can still hear you. So at some point you want to get what's called a pre-qualification letter or a pre-approval letter. That letter essentially says that you are eligible to apply for a loan if you, with whatever documentation you presented, to the mortgage broker at that point. Of course, it's a letter. They haven't dug that deeply into your financial background. A couple of things are going on here. Obviously, the mortgage broker wants to get your business. They don't want to turn you away at the front door and say, no, you're not even eligible. That nobody does business that way then. So they will give you this pre-approval letter saying that you are credit worthy, provided later on they can do a more in-depth study of your background. Pre-approvals normally lead to approvals, but when someone starts scrutinizing your background, they may see stuff they didn't like or doesn't fit their lending profile, and then ultimately get denied. But that's kind of rare. Pre-approval and pre-qualifications are pretty much yet another step in that process of ending up buying the home. So you really have to get over that hurdle before you go on to the next step.
Okay, so a lot of people seem to think there is a difference between pre-qualification versus pre-approval. So I think what Bob was kind of leading to is that there's almost no difference between the two, because at the end of the day, a lender will again verify things toward the end. They might ask you for current pay stubs again. They may pull your credit again. So even though one might say pre-approval, it's not really approved until you get to the end and you've been cleared for a closing. And that's when, you really are approved. So sometimes, again, people just get a little confused when you deal with different brokers. Sometimes they'll say, well, we're not going to accept a pre-qualification. That's not real. A pre-approval is real. And what we're telling you is that that's not necessarily the case. It really goes all the way to the end of a process. And even if you have a letter that says you were pre-approved, you still could, at the end of the day, be turned down for that particular deal for a myriad of reasons.
So honestly, I've seen in almost 3 stages of approval. One is when you first walk into the door, introduce yourself to the person. They take your social, run your credit, you seem okay, you have a job, etc. So that's the initial step of qualification. The next step is the qualification, where they give you a letter, a commitment letter. But even that commitment letter ends with saying, we're going to make this loan probably so long as you can supply us with the below 10 items. All right. So even though you give them those 10 items, I always say the file goes back to those bean counters again, who for the 3rd time will go over your file with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that everything you told them was truthful, verifiable. And stuff could happen over the 3 months this is pending. I've had clients lose their jobs, over it. And one of my first closings was 43 years ago. I take for granted that it's steady. Income goes up, income comes down. You know that.
Now, Bob, I would just like to jump ahead a little bit. I know you're a little pressed for time. There are a lot of changes coming up in the industry regarding a property condition disclosure, also known as a home warranty. Always in the past and up until tomorrow, we've always been able to have the seller pretty much waive filling it out, pay a $500 penalty as long as it's not a probate case or something like that, in which case then they don't have to pay the $500 fine. But this new property condition disclosure that they're giving out, can you just give us a little bit of idea of what you may have heard so far in the industry? Also, people should note that they should speak to their own attorneys. We are not giving legal advice here. A lot of this is up in the air. These are changes that, like I said, are just being implemented on March 20th of 2024, so in a couple of days. And we're all trying as an industry to put this together and get on the same page. I know on the broker side of things, we are being told that we should simply give the property condition disclosure, which is something that says all these different things about the condition of things within this property that we have going to be for sale. And so we're being told to let them go talk with their attorney about it. And we're simply going to have the seller sign a statement that says that we gave it to them. And I'm just wondering on your end how you might be handling this, since it's going into effect in 2 days.
Well, just a couple comments. Really, no attorney knows how they're going to handle this. This was a law that was changed without any input from anybody in the real estate industry. These are people up in Albany who have probably never been a real estate lawyer, a real estate broker, sold or bought properties, that are trying to be do-gooders for everybody else. And you got the common law issue of caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. That applies in a lot of life. However, somebody in Albany thought they had a more better idea, and that more better idea came out as the old law was either fill out a questionnaire and face potential liability if you answer the questionnaire wrong. You could answer it true, false, or unknown, or I don't know. So anytime you answer a question with three choices, someone can pick on you and say, really, you didn't know it was true, or really it's false, or really unknown. So there was a $500 credit that could be given to the purchaser, probably with the idea in the back of their mind, let the purchaser go out and hire, an engineer to find a, to do an inspection and give them their idea. And that would sort of, balance out the scales of justice. So everybody, without exception, gave a $500 credit. Why? They didn't want to find out that they may have answered a question incorrectly, or that they didn't know when maybe 30 years ago something happened and they forgot about it and they never happened again, and they answered the question incorrectly. So somewhere along the line, though, that was working fine. But somewhere along the line, someone decided to change it, and the law is changing tomorrow. And you can ask 10 lawyers what they're going to do, and 10 lawyers are going to say probably they don't know what to do. What I think is the prevailing thought is to have the purchaser waive in writing the requirement of a disclosure law, and give them a $500 or $1,000 credit, and tell them, to be used for a home inspection to satisfy, yourself. Now, some people are saying, well, if it's a law, don't they have to follow the law? Well, lawyers being lawyers, we analyze this, and we felt that there are laws out there that say you cannot waive this law. And that seems pretty clear. However, this law, in its most current form going into March 19th, March 20th, doesn't have that provision. It doesn't say you cannot waive this. So lawyers are saying, if it doesn't say it, you can waive it, and we're going to force the other side, to waive it, and we're going to give them $500 or $1,000 and urge them to, get their own home inspection, rather than rely on representations of homeowners. Sure, there may be a bad homeowner out there that's trying to hide something, but the majority, look, have lived in the house for 10, 20, 30 years. They don't on a daily basis do an examination of their property. I actually always urge my sellers to do a home inspection before they put their house on a market. Why? So it just takes a whole slew of topics off the table, like, there's a leaky faucet, or there's an electrical panel that's not covered. Have your own inspector come in, do your own home audit in a sense, so that there's nothing really to discuss or argue about. But in any event, it's going to be interesting what, how this law really percolates. I know it's going to put a lot of time into me explaining to my client, either the seller or the buyer, how they should proceed, then negotiating back and forth with the lawyer. So it's going to take up a lot of time. And it was also pointed out at some of the seminars that I attended that no one will really know the answer to this question until 10 years from now, if someone brought a lawsuit, shortly after this law goes into effect, they would probably start an action. Take a while for the lawsuit to come to fruition. Then someone will appeal, and then the winner or loser of that will probably appeal. And as you know, with lawsuits, as it winds its way through the system, could take 5 to 10 years. So no one will really know the answer of what to do, for a while. So we're all sort of gambling. We're hedging our bets as to what, trying to make the best decision that we can for our clients. But the law isn't. It sounds like a well-meaning law, but in practice, it's difficult to protect either the purchaser, or the seller.
Well, Bob, we thank you for your time. I know you've been practicing for a long time. Is it 36 years?
No, worse than that, 43 years.
Oh my goodness, 43 years.
Yes,
Wow, 43 years of experience we have here. So stay tuned. Hopefully we can get Bob back in about a week or so. We had a lot more to chat about, and then maybe we'll have some more updates on this property condition disclosure as things get put into place. So we appreciate your time, Bob.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for having me on.
Okay, take care.